your video. And that'll be fine. But otherwise, welcome once again. I am going to ask Marshawn if you wouldn't mind just giving a brief introduction of who you are and where you're from and what you're doing.
Yes, thanks, Jovi. And it's a pleasure to see you all. My name is Marshawn Allen. I am the Vice President of Advocacy and Partnerships of Represent Justice. Represent Justice is an organization that started from the impact campaign around the film Just Mercy, which is a film about the life and legacy of Brian Stevenson. And we have continued to, we're now continuing to work of the campaign, a nonprofit organization that uses the power of media to engage audience and reimagining the justice system. And I am currently in Maryland. I'm from Chicago, but I am currently living in Maryland.
Thank you, Marshawn. I think one of the things that I really struck me when we were making this little film was the conversation in the very beginning between Mickey Gaynor and Howard Conant, who are two of our founding board members. And they were talking about going down to Springfield and finding out that legislators didn't even know that we could sentence kids to life without parole in Illinois. And we actually still can. That's one of the things we're trying to do, is close one of the last loopholes to juvenile life without parole sentences in Illinois. And Marshawn used to work here. It was, on our team here at Restore Justice, and is now doing this work nationally. And Marshawn, I was wondering if you would sort of let people know a little bit about, the context here and whether is it odd that Illinois still has this this sentence on the books? Oh.
It's odd in the sense that the majority of states have now abolished it or don't use it. But I think that understanding Illinois politics is not odd at all, that they is hesitant to abolish juvenile life without parole and to even make those changes retroactive.
And what's been your experience? You've spent quite a lot of time actually talking with legislators, not just in Illinois, but around the country. What are the arguments that you hear against kind of getting rid of these last loopholes?
Yeah, well, I started with Restore Justice in 2018. And at the time we were trying to push the youth for parole bill at the time, and Julie Anderson and Scott and some of the other board members, and we were driving almost 4,000 miles, over 4,000 miles in Illinois to talk to legislators about, mostly Republican, about the need for passing this bill. And a lot of times when we were speaking to legislators, the main concern was that one thing was that they were saying that they made a promise to victims, for one, that the person who was serving the sentence was going to serve natural life, for one. Some of the other concerns was one of the ones that we got when we were speaking to one of the legislators was about the spillover coming from Chicago. They were worried about people getting out and committing more crime. Those were the main two. But it was a bunch. It depends on who we were talking to, but those were the main two concerns that were coming out. We were hearing from legislators that they were concerned about what may happen if they let these people go, and they'd be on the hook for passing the bill, and as well as what they promised the victims' families, and they didn't want to let the victims' families down, and they should be the main consideration in any legislation moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that, and I know. Honestly, I mean, we do have to be really thoughtful and concerned in this movement about victims of violent crime. It's a really difficult situation. And we have many allies. I see a couple of them, Madeline's on, and others sort of, Jean Bishop was on. I don't know if she's in our group, but there are, you'll like, those of you who know me know I'm a little obsessed with Ted Lasso, is all people are different people. All victims are different people. They're not a monolithic group that all has one opinion. And Marshawn, you've spent a lot of time kind of wrestling with this stuff. I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about, your own experience. And I know we've, got quite a close connection to a lot of victims groups and individual victims who wanted to engage, and they don't think it's fair either. They don't want people dying in prison for things they did when they were kids.
Yeah, and to quickly, before I go into that, I want to say that I think the legislators have like a one-sided view of what victims want and what they think. I think they make assumptions about what victims want, and they may talk to a few, but if you talk to the whole, they have different opinions about different things. And I think that there was a study that came out a few years ago that said that victims wanted, safe communities, and they were open to shorter sentences and focusing on rehabilitation. But my story, as I think most of you know, I'm seeing some familiar faces, that I'm from Illinois. And when I was 15 years old, I was charged and convicted of uh, uh, 2 counts of felony murder and sentenced to 2 terms of life without parole, sorry, in prison. And I served almost 25 years before I was released as a result of People versus Leon Miller, and as well as Miller versus Alabama. And I was released in 2016 and have been home now. Actually, Monday made 5 years that I've been home. But that's some of my story. While I was inside, I just never believed that I was going to spend the rest of my life in prison. And it helped me to shape what I was doing inside, like trying to educate myself and keep up with current events that was going on outside, so that when I was released, and even though I had a natural life sentence in my mind, I was like, I'm going to get out of here one day. And I was just hoping that, once I get out, I would be able to like find a job and do all the things that I want to do, and dreamed about while I was in prison.
You've done that and more. I mean, Marshawn is a really good example of another theme in the film, and again, not an exception, an example, right, Marshawn? Not an exception. It's really, you are an exceptional human being. That's true. But I think what we've found, Marshawn was the first person who had served part of a juvenile life sentence, what became a 25-year sentence. The first person we hired at Restore Justice who had just come out of prison. And after Wendell, we were able to bring on Wendell Robinson. After Wendell, we were able to bring on Nelson Morris. And then this year, we actually, for the first time, had 2 apprentices at once. We had Harold Hageman, who did the incredible spoken word piece that you just heard, and James Swansea, who's also in the video. And now we've made it a commitment to grow the organization and grow our impact by developing not just, and Howard says this in the video, not just spokespeople. I don't think our intention has ever been to create spokespeople. It's been to develop leaders to take the baton of this movement who were impacted by these terrible sentences. It shouldn't be me at the front of this thing. It should be Marshawn, it should be Wendell, it'll be James, it'll be Harold, it'll be Nelson. And Marshawn, what Marshawn has done by taking this 5-year period since he got out of prison and kind of transforming what could be a really sort of, you could just keep going. You could have gone to law school to practice corporate law, but you're not. You chose to pursue a career in leadership of changing these laws. And you're the reason we're here. So I'm curious to know, Marshawn, if you have any thoughts about the video. I mean, you were convicted of felony murder, and Harold's piece, the spoken word piece we just heard, actually was one of the best kind of depictions of what felony murder is. So, what did you think about his story that he told in that piece?
Well, I thought the entire video was awesome, by the way, to see Mickey and Howard and as well as Wendell and the rest of the RJ team, who I miss so much. But I thought that it was very on point. It was clearly articulated what happens, and he was talking about a specific case, but I think that the general theme is what happened in felony murder case, especially when you're talking about juveniles, that they're in a group and thinking about doing something that obviously they shouldn't be doing, but they're not really thinking through what the consequences are or what may happen after that. But I thought that was brilliant what he did with this piece and video, the rap that he created. a spoken word piece, I should say, that he created in response to and told the story about felony murder from beginning to end. It was absolutely brilliant.
Well, one of the things that Scott Main and Shobha Mahadev, who are on this Zoom right now, you can see Shobha. I can't see Scott because he doesn't have his picture on.
I
right
see him.
now.
He's there.
Oh, you see him. Oh, there you are. Hi, Scott. Shobha and Scott are on the board, and we're founding board members of Restore Justice with Marshawn and Julie and some of the others. And we're part of drafting a piece of legislation that sort of got grafted into a criminal justice omnibus bill that passed in January. And those of you who aren't in Illinois and haven't been reading news stories about it every day since January 15th might not know what I'm talking about. So I'll just give a quick primer. The Illinois General Assembly, led by the Legislative Black Caucus, took on 3 large pillars of kind of massive reform to state law, not just in it was 4 pillars actually, right? Not just in criminal legal reform, but also in economic development and healthcare and education. And they, for the first time in the history of the state, they drove a really comprehensive agenda and got it passed in a really short period of time. After decades really of kind of eating a lot of bad policy that harmed communities, they really stood up and did something comprehensive and exceptional. And we're incredibly grateful to them for doing that. One little piece of our kind of agenda that made it in, that Scott and Shobha were participated in drafting the original version of, was a reform to the felony murder rule that prevents the situation that Harold described. So I guess one thing I just want to make sure I say out loud, and I'm really proud to say, is because of the work that this team has done, because of the work Marshawn did early on researching and really pushing us to work on felony murder, and the work that Scott and Shobha did, months and months and years of work, that the situation Harold described, where you're pinned, where your best friend's murder, your cousin's murder, your little brother's murder is pinned to you because they were killed in the commission of an underlying felony, is no longer possible in the state of Illinois because of their work, because of Marshawn and Scott and Shobha and a few other wonderful people on this call. So thank you. It's a, and it's something we celebrated at the time. It's any change is hard. One of the worst and kind of most difficult things about changes that we try to make in Illinois is that many of them are not applied retroactively. So Marshawn has been involved in this as well. So I'm gonna ask you, Marshawn, what does it mean? Like, how do we, when we pass laws and they're not retroactive, what does that mean?
It's hard because when you're inside and you receive hope or are hopeful that the bills are changing. You do love to see the progress that's being made out here, even when it doesn't affect you. You're just happy to see that things are changing. But it's really difficult when you see, like, your friends, people you've been with for 20, 30 years inside, and there's a change in law and they're released. You're happy for them, you're really excited for them, but it's hard because you're left behind. And I know that even me being out here and still talking to some of the guys inside, I feel, I guess in some ways guilty about that, and that's part of what fuels me to continue to do this work, is because I believe they deserve to be out here as much as I do. Some of them probably more than I do, but I really think that it's really hard. But when the bill is passed and it's actually something that really affects you, like felony murder being passed and you're convicted of felony murder and they change the laws to revise it, and that particular provision that they revised apply to you, but it's not retroactive, that makes it especially hard, because it doesn't make any sense why people going forward are not charged with a crime in this way. But I'm not only being charged with this, but I'm still being punished for something that's not even illegal anymore. And it's heartbreaking for the guys on the inside to have to live with that and not knowing, particularly for the people who don't have an out date or have a very long out date and may not be home for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years because of the sentence they have. But it's just really, really difficult to understand why legislators feel that this conduct is no longer illegal, but you're still going to hold me in prison and punish me for that. It doesn't make sense. And I think that my personal view is that anytime the legislator make a change, it should automatically apply to people who are currently incarcerated and who are serving a sentence and convicted under those laws. It should be an automatic thing.
Yeah, we totally agree. I am in agreement with you that it makes no sense. But we have a question in the chat about whether, what are lawmakers' arguments? Like what do lawmakers say? And Marshawn, I think you mentioned a couple of them earlier. You talked about finality. Lawmakers want they want a deal that they made with a victim to be final. That they say and that's a legitimate argument that they make. They make some arguments about constitutionality. When it comes to juvenile life without parole, sometimes what we'll get over the years, we've heard from legislators, do you really think they're kids? When I was 17, I knew what was right and wrong. I knew the difference between right and wrong. And we've heard that over the years. That's one of the when you're sitting in a room with a legislator and they say that, it's really hard because it's a bias that it's not rooted in anything. It's not rooted in reality or fact or data. It's rooted in a personal bias that kids should know better and they should be punished really harshly if not. Honestly, the person who asked this question, and you won't hear this, but there's a lot of racism. I mean, people won't say, I believe in life without parole sentences for children because I know they only lock up Black children, and that's fine with me because they're probably going to be criminals anyway.
I think that's the thing, Joby, is that they don't see us as not just kids, period, but especially not as their kids.
Yes.
And I just hosted a panel last night with Chris Henney from Georgetown, and in her book she talked about how a case she had early on in her career with a juvenile who created a fake Molotov bomb from cleaning supplies at home, accidentally brought to school, and they charged him and with these very serious charges, and she ended up getting them out luckily. But she went to a conference and the same thing that happened to another lady, her son, and she asked Chris asked the lady, like, what happened to your son? And she was like, well, they put him in chemistry class. And so you have the Black kid who did the same thing, who get charged and had to go through the juvenile system and is traumatized by that experience. And then on the other hand, you have a white child who does the exact same thing, and they see the creativity in him, and they sent them to chemistry class. So it's just crazy.
It is. And I think, now that we're sort of coming to the end of our program, I do want to leave you with a little bit of hope. And one thing that I say in the video is it has to be more than hope, right? And I think those of you who are new to Restore Justice, I just want you to know that we were founded in late 2014. We founded a 501c4, which is sort of a political organization to do the lobbying and any electoral work we felt needed doing. And in late 2015, we started Restore Justice Foundation to sort of develop and push a policy agenda year after year after year after year that's chipping away at laws that keep people in prison for far too long and far beyond any public safety benefit. And what you've heard today is proof, from Marshawn, who's probably one of the most beautiful people who I've had the pleasure of having in my life. And that anybody who's sitting in a cell for the rest of their life it's tragic. It's just tragic, and it's compounding the tragedy of the original crime. There are other ways that we can keep our communities safe. And we work really closely with a group called Precious Blood Ministry of Reconciliation on the South Side. And they have taught us so much and teach everybody in our city so much about alternatives to incarceration. And so I don't want anyone who doesn't know us well to leave this call thinking we don't care or we don't think violence is serious. We do. And we believe, however, and I believe personally, that incarcerating people for decades actually contributes to violence. It increases the net violence in our communities. One, by taking mature people and stealing them, robbing them of their lives, and robbing their communities of them, robbing their communities of their growth, of their development, of their contributions, of their intellect, of their passion. Marshawn's community was robbed of him. And it didn't help anybody. Nobody was safer. Deeply, deeply grateful that, you know, it took lawyers like Randolph Stone here and Shoba and Scott and many, many, many others to pry these little cracks open. But we need to keep prying and keep prying. And that's why we need to grow. So this is a fundraiser. I don't know if you knew that. This is a fundraiser. We're here to raise some money. And there are a couple ways that you can help. The first is if you haven't donated, or even if you have, you can go right on back to that page. Our goal was really ambitious. We've almost doubled the size of our staff since the beginning. Actually, no, we have doubled the size of our staff since the beginning of the pandemic, and we've doubled it by hiring people when they come out, as I've said, and training them to do this work, not to be spokespeople, not to give speeches and tell their stories every day, but to do this work. To do what Ben Riddell does hopefully someday, and to do what Sarah Stout does hopefully one day, and to do what Gail Smith does hopefully one day, and to do what Madeline Bear does hopefully one day, and to do what Jason Sweat does hopefully one day. I'm looking at all these wonderful names. We need them. We need them in this work in a serious way. And I think we've got some critical mass now. We have 3 men on staff, and we're ready. You know, we're ready to hire a couple more people in January. And this fundraiser is a big part of how that's going to happen. We have 2 board members who have ponied up $100,000 each as a match for new and increased donations this year. We are hoping to, not just by the end of the day today, we obviously have given ourselves a little more time than that, but to raise that money. The idea is to bring in as many new people as we can. So if all you do today is have a kind word in your heart for us, and when you next time you see somebody who you think might be looking for an opportunity to get involved with an organization, to donate to an organization, mention us. And among other great organizations, we're one option. If you have the capacity to give, please do. If you're looking for last minute Christmas gifts, our auction has some really beautiful options. And the auction is, you know, pretty big part of our kind of plan every year is to do this wonderful auction. And we have men throughout the year, all men so far. We haven't gotten any contributions from women yet, maybe someday, who develop art for us and send it to us. This year was very hard for them. Supplies were really short. So we have fewer paintings than we have in the past, but they're made with love, and they are made with hope, and made with belief. So I hope you'll take a look at those. If Marshawn, do you have any closing words before we close up our event for the day?
I just want to thank everyone for first for joining us today, but also for all of those who continue to contribute and be involved and making donations. I see Randolph Stone there, and I want to say that he's actually one of the reasons I was here. He actually came to court in support of representing the coalition at my post-conviction hearing, and argued why People versus Miller should apply to my case, and it worked, and I ended up getting resentenced. But I want to thank just everyone, and just let you all know that the guys on the inside, and the girls, I'm sorry, but they are really grateful for the you all's participating and donating, and your time, your heart, and your resources to help fight for them and get them out. So thank you.
Thank you, Marshawn. Thank you, everyone. We'll be sending you lots of links and reminders in a follow-up. Thank you for spending this hour with us. Could not be more grateful for you. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. See you back on email and hopefully in person for real hugs soon. Bye-bye now.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you all.